In 2020, Microsoft quietly pulled Cortana from phones. This is the assistant that shipped on over 1 billion Windows 10 PCs, and still lost. The reason? A 2-second delay in the cloud. Distribution was supposed to be Microsoft's unbeatable weapon. The largest install base on Earth, an assistant preloaded on more than 1 billion machines. Nobody else was close. So how did it lose? Microsoft retired Cortana from consumers. Gone from phones in 2020, stripped out of Windows in 2023. Meanwhile, Alexa and Siri thrived. Here's the one decision that changed everything. A single architecture choice that no head start could outrun. A billion device lead beaten by a slower loop. Let's open the box and see exactly where those seconds went. Here's where it starts inside the machine. A voice assistant isn't one program. It's 2 stages, and where each stage runs decides everything. Stage 1 lives on your device. It's a tiny listener that does one job. Notice when you say the magic words. For Cortana, that phrase was "Hey Cortana." This little listener is always on, always awake, sipping almost no power. The same way your phone hears "Hey Siri" without draining the battery overnight. It never leaves the chip in front of you. And here's the thing. Cortana did this part fine. The wake-word listener worked. It heard you. Nobody lost the assistant war because the computer failed to notice you were talking. So if stage 1 is local and quick, what's stage 2? Stage 2 is the hard part. Understanding what you actually said and what you want. Turning the sounds "what's the weather" into an actual answer. And that's where a fork in the road appears. You can do that understanding right there on the device. Or you can ship the audio somewhere else. A data center may be hundreds of miles away. Do the thinking on powerful servers and send the answer back. That split is the whole story. On the chip in your hand, an answer can come back almost instantly. In a data center across the country, every answer has to make a round trip first. Same question, 2 completely different clocks. Microsoft leaned hard on the second path. Cortana sent the real work to the cloud. Remember that handoffs. The moment your voice leaves the local listener and heads for a distant server. That handoff is where the delay is born. Everything Cortana got right up to this point won't matter, because of what happens in the gap. 2 stages. 1 stayed home. 1 went traveling. Now the round trip, let's time it. You say a question. Cortana records the audio and sends it up to Azure, Microsoft's cloud. Their servers turn your sounds into text, figure out what you meant, build a response, and send it all the way back to your PC. Every single query made that journey. And that journey cost you roughly 2 seconds before Cortana even started to answer. 2 seconds. Doesn't sound like much. Read a headline and you've burned 2 seconds without noticing. But hold your breath and count them out while waiting for a machine to respond. 1, 2. And it feels like forever. Now compare the rivals. Apple and Amazon fought this exact battle by keeping more of the work close to the user, pushing more recognition onto the device itself, tuning their systems so the response came back snappier. They shaved the trip. Cortana kept taking the long way around. Here's why 2 seconds is fatal for voice specifically. Talking is a rhythm. You ask, the answer comes, you ask again. Back and forth like a real conversation. A 2-second gap shatters that rhythm. The beat drops. It stops feeling like talking to something and starts feeling like filing a request and waiting. And people don't wait. They tap. And it gets worse over time because the damage compounds. The first slow answer annoys you. The 10th slow answer teaches you a lesson. Don't bother. Your brain quietly files the assistant under not worth it, and you stop reaching for it entirely. A tool that makes you wait doesn't just lose 1 query. It trains you out of the habit completely. That's the quiet killer. Not 1 bad moment, but a slow lesson repeated until using Cortana felt like a mistake. The listener heard you fine. The answer just came too late to matter. That covers the delay, now the place. Even a perfect, instant Cortana had a second problem. It lived in the wrong spot. Think about where each assistant actually made its home. Amazon put Alexa in the kitchen and the living room, inside cheap little Echo speakers you could scatter around the house. Apple put Siri in your pocket, riding along inside every iPhone. And Cortana lived on the desktop PC. Sit with that for a second because it's the whole problem. Where do you win with voice? You win when your hands and eyes are already busy. You're cooking dough on your fingers and you just ask for a timer. You're driving, eyes on the road, and you ask for directions. Voice is a gift when you can't type. But at a desk you already have a keyboard, a mouse, and a screen sitting right in front of you. Your hands are free. Typing a question is fast and silent and never mishears you. And it definitely never makes you wait 2 seconds. So Cortana was offering a slower way to do something you could already do faster the old way. It was solving a problem the desk didn't have. There was one place Cortana could have owned, your phone, where voice actually shines. Microsoft had a phone, Windows Phone, but that platform collapsed around 2016, and Microsoft essentially walked away from it. When the phone died, Cortana lost its only real beachhead in the mobile world. The one context where people reach for voice by instinct. So line it up. The assistant was slow, and it was slow in the exact place where being slow hurt most and helped least. Put those together and you get a tool with no natural moment to exist. Not a single point in a normal day where a person would think, out of all my options right now, I'll ask Cortana. Right idea, wrong rooms. So Microsoft read the scoreboard and made a hard call. Here's the pivot. Around 2019 and 2020, they stopped trying to beat Alexa and Siri at consumer voice. Instead, they repositioned Cortana entirely. No longer your everyday assistant, but a helper for work. A productivity tool inside Microsoft 365, tucked into email and calendars and Teams meetings. The retreat was blunt and public. The consumer Cortana app was pulled from Android and iPhone in 2020. Then in 2023, Cortana was stripped out of Windows completely, and its spot was handed to a new name you've heard. Copilot. Read that plainly. Microsoft removed the assistant from the very billion machines it had spent years installing it on. That's not a tweak. That's an admission. All that distribution, a billion PCs, an assistant sitting right there in the taskbar. It never turned into a habit. People had it. They just never used it. And that's the whole through line of this story in one sentence. Getting installed and getting used are two completely different achievements. Distribution, sheer reach, got Cortana onto more devices than any rival could dream of. But two other things decided whether anyone actually opened it. How fast it answered, and whether it was sitting in a place where you'd naturally want it. Cortana had the reach. It lost the other two. Being everywhere isn't the same as being wanted anywhere. So here's the one decision that changed everything. The lesson worth carrying out of this whole story. Install base is not engagement. A billion idle icons lost to a handful of tools people actually reached for. Being everywhere counted for nothing because nobody was pressing the button. And that 2-second delay, it was never a bug someone forgot to fix. It was a choice. Cloud first send the thinking far away, baked into the design from day one. For most software, a couple seconds is invisible. But voice is a conversation, and a conversation can't absorb a 2-second pause without feeling broken. The architecture and the medium were simply at war. Look at who won and why. Alexa and Siri didn't beat Cortana by reaching more people. Cortana reached more people. They won on speed and on being in the room where voice makes sense. Faster answer, right place. That was the entire game, and Microsoft came third in a 2-horse race it should have led. And that is why Cortana failed despite the single biggest distribution advantage in the history of technology. The most PCs on Earth. The slowest answer in the room. When your tool asks people to wait, the size of your empire won't save you. They'll just quietly stop asking. The most PCs on the planet, and still the slowest answer in the room. That's the paradox Cortana never solved. Now Microsoft is trying again, with Copilot sitting in the same taskbar. So here's the real question to watch. Has it learned the latency lesson, or is the answer still coming from somewhere too far away? Keep an eye on the clock. That's where these things are really won.